Welcome back. If you were here for our first night together, you already know the room we're returning to. The quiet space inside you where a younger version of yourself has been waiting, patiently, to be seen. Tonight, we go a layer deeper, using two of the oldest and most researched tools in the whole of subconscious work: visualization and affirmation. These words get used casually so often that their real power gets lost. Tonight, I want to reclaim them, slowly, and show you why the subconscious mind responds to them so completely, not as wishful thinking, but as a genuine, well-documented mechanism of how the mind rehearses and eventually believes whatever it repeats in a state of relaxation like the one you're settling into right now.
This is not a trick, and it is not mystical. It is simply how learning has always worked in the human mind, through repeated exposure, paired with feeling, absorbed most deeply in relaxed or drowsy states. Children learn their earliest beliefs about themselves and the world in exactly this way, before the analytical mind had fully developed enough to filter what was being absorbed. This is, in fact, part of why those early beliefs run so deep and prove so difficult to argue away with adult logic alone. They were never installed through logic. They were installed through repetition and feeling in an undefended state, which means they can also be gently updated the same way. Let us speak too about why visualization specifically, rather than simply thinking a thought, carries such particular weight. The brain, remarkably, does not fully distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and an actual lived one, at least at the level of many of the neural and physiological processes involved. This is well documented in
Let us also address a common misunderstanding about affirmations, one that has made many people dismiss this practice too quickly after a single disappointing attempt. Simply repeating a phrase you don't believe over and over without any accompanying feeling or imagery tends to produce very little change, and in some documented cases can even backfire, causing the analytical mind to argue more forcefully against a claim that feels obviously false when compared to felt experience. Saying, "I am completely confident," while feeling nothing but anxiety, can sometimes deepen the sense of gap between the words and reality, rather than closing it. Narrator pause, 3 seconds. This is why tonight's approach is different, and I want you to understand exactly why. Rather than asserting a broad, general claim about who you are, we are going to address a specific child in a specific imagined scene, with specific words matched to a specific need. This is not a claim about your entire identity that the analytical mind might reflexively challenge. It is simply an act of kindness offered to an image in a moment you are actively constructing and feeling as you go. This bypasses much of the resistance that flat, generic affirmation tends to.
This means that when you picture, clearly and with feeling, a moment of being comforted, of being seen, of being told exactly what you needed to hear, some part of your nervous system responds as though this is genuinely happening, not merely being imagined. This is the real mechanism behind the reparenting work we began in our first night together, and the reason we're going to lean into it even more deliberately tonight. Now let us speak of affirmation, and why the specific wording and delivery of an affirmation matters far more than people often assume. A generic, flat affirmation, repeated quickly, without feeling, without any accompanying image, tends to bounce off the surface of the mind, precisely because it lacks the emotional and sensory weight the subconscious responds to. But an affirmation spoken slowly, paired with a felt image, directed at a specific, real need rather than a vague generality, tends to land far more deeply. Let us also address a common misunderstanding about affirmations, one that has made many people dismiss this practice too quickly after a single disappointing attempt.
Simply repeating a phrase you don't believe over and over without any accompanying feeling or imagery tends to produce very little change, and in some documented cases can even backfire, causing the analytical mind to argue more forcefully against a claim that feels obviously false when compared to felt experience. Saying, "I am completely confident," while feeling nothing but anxiety, can sometimes deepen the sense of gap between the words and reality, rather than closing it. This is why tonight's approach is different, and I want you to understand exactly why. Rather than asserting a broad, general claim about who you are, we are going to address a specific child in a specific imagined scene, with specific words matched to a specific need. This is not a claim about your entire identity that the analytical mind might reflexively challenge. It is simply an act of kindness offered to an image in a moment you are actively constructing and feeling as you go. This bypasses much of the resistance that flat, generic affirmation tends to trigger.
There is also a difference between affirming what you want to become and affirming what you are already offering right now, in this moment. Tonight's affirmations aren't asking you to convince yourself of some distant, unproven future state. They are describing an action you are actually taking, right now, in this visualization. The act of kneeling down, of speaking gently, of staying present. This makes them far easier for the subconscious to accept, because they aren't abstract promises. They are descriptions of something genuinely happening, in real time, in the space of your own imagination. Narrator pause. 3 seconds. I want to mention one more piece of this puzzle: consistency. A single night of this work will not undo years of an old belief, and that is not a failure of the method. It is simply how deep learning has always worked, whether the original belief took years to form or one particularly intense moment to install. What tonight offers is one more repetition, one more night of gentle rehearsal, added to whatever nights came before it and whatever nights will come after. The relationship being built here is cumulative, the way trust in any relationship is built, slowly, through return visits, rather than through one dramatic breakthrough. Narrator pause. 3 seconds. I want to add one more layer of understanding here, because it explains precisely why this particular hour, at this particular pace, is so uniquely suited to the work we're doing tonight. Something related to what's sometimes called the levels of consciousness the mind passes through on its way to sleep. Researchers who study brain activity describe the fully alert, analytical waking mind as operating largely in what's called beta activity: fast, busy, oriented toward problem solving and vigilance. As the body begins to relax, the mind shifts into a slower rhythm, often called alpha, the state of calm, unfocused awareness you might recognize from daydreaming, or the pleasant drowsiness of a warm bath. As relaxation deepens further, the mind moves into theta, a state associated with the very edge of sleep, vivid imagery, and notably heightened suggestibility, the same threshold we discussed as the hypnagogic gate. This is not mystical language, though it is sometimes borrowed by traditions that describe it in more esoteric terms: layers of consciousness, veils between waking and dreaming, thresholds of deeper awareness. Different traditions, across different eras, keep independently arriving at a similar map because the underlying territory, a mind gradually loosening its analytical grip on the way to sleep, has always been available to careful observers, whether they described it through modern brain research or through older symbolic language. Right now, if you have been following along with this voice, breathing slowly, letting your body settle, you are very likely somewhere between alpha and theta, precisely the depth where tonight's visualization and affirmations carry the most weight. This is not a coincidence of good luck.
It is the entire reason this kind of work is done at this hour, in this tone, at this pace, rather than during a busy afternoon with the analytical mind fully engaged.
Let us begin the practice itself. I want you to picture, once again, the child we met on our first night together. Or, if this is your first time joining us, simply let an image arise now, at whatever age feels right, without forcing anything. See them clearly, in as much sensory detail as you can. What are they wearing? What does the room around them look like? Is there a particular texture? A particular light? A particular quality to the air in this imagined space? The more detail you can bring to this image, the more fully the subconscious mind will treat it as real, and the more powerful tonight's work will become. Now, imagine walking toward this child, slowly, the way we practiced before. And this time, I want you to imagine kneeling down to meet them at their own height, not looming over them, but meeting them eye to eye, the way any adult who wants to be trusted by a child instinctively knows to do. Feel, if you can, the temperature of the room. Feel the ground beneath your knees. Feel the specific expression on this child's face as they notice you kneeling there, at their level, patient, unhurried. Now, let us add one more layer to this visualization, a technique sometimes used in therapeutic imagery work called resourcing. I want you to imagine now bringing something into this scene that this child never had, but always needed. Perhaps it's a soft blanket, warm and heavy. Perhaps it's a favorite toy, finally given without condition. Perhaps it's simply your own steady hand, resting on their shoulder, staying there for as long as they need it to stay. Place this resource into the scene now, gently. Watch in your mind's eye how the child responds to receiving it. Let this moment breathe without rushing toward the next part of tonight's journey. Let us add a few more affirmations to this practice, each addressing a slightly different corner of what may have gone unmet in your own early life. As before, imagine speaking each one directly to the child in your visualization, slowly, pausing to feel however it lands before moving to the next. Now, I want to offer you a series of affirmations, not generic ones, but specific reparenting statements, each addressing a particular unmet need we discussed in our first night together. As I offer each one, I want you to imagine saying it directly to this child, slowly, and pausing to notice how it lands, both in them and in you. You don't have to earn my attention. I already want to look at you. Let this settle. Notice if the child's posture changes at all. Notice if anything in your own chest responds. Your big feelings don't scare me. I can stay right here while you feel whatever you feel. You were never too much. You were only ever a child in a world that sometimes had too little room for how much you felt. You don't have to take care of me. Let me take care of you tonight. You are allowed to rest. You don't have to be useful to deserve love. Let these words continue to settle, however they land tonight. There is no need to force a dramatic reaction. Sometimes the deepest shifts happen quietly, almost imperceptibly, the way a seed changes underground long before anything visible breaks the surface. It's safe to want things here. You don't have to shrink your wanting to keep the peace. I'm not going anywhere, even if this takes longer than you expect it to. You didn't cause the things that happened. You were only ever a child, doing the best you could with what you had. You can be soft here. You don't have to be strong for anyone in this room, including me. Notice gently whether any one of these affirmations landed more strongly than the others. That particular one is often worth returning to on other nights as its own standalone practice. A phrase you can quietly repeat during an ordinary day whenever the old need it addresses happens to surface. Let us deepen the visualization once more, adding sensory richness the way we discussed earlier. Imagine the specific sound of your own voice as you speak these words. Warm, unhurried, nothing like the rushed or impatient tone this child may have grown used to hearing. Imagine the specific feeling of your hand, if you're imagining touch, or the specific quality of your presence, if touch doesn't feel right for this particular child. The more textured this imagined scene becomes, the more completely the subconscious mind treats it as a genuine experience, worthy of being carried forward into how you understand yourself. I want to speak briefly about something that sometimes arises during this kind of visualization work: resistance. Sometimes when we try to picture a comforting scene, another image intrudes instead. A memory of a moment when comfort was notably absent, or a harsh internal voice insisting this is silly, or won't work, or isn't deserved. If this happened for you tonight, I want you to know it is not a failure of the exercise. It is often the exact material the work needs to address. That intruding memory or harsh voice is likely connected to the very belief we're gently trying to update tonight. If this resistance arose for you, you can simply acknowledge it. I notice a part of me doesn't believe this yet, and continue the visualization anyway, without needing the resistance to fully resolve first. Belief in this kind of work rarely arrives all at once. It arrives in layers, the way trust arrives in layers, built through repeated, gentle exposure, rather than a single convincing argument. Let us offer one final affirmation before we move toward tonight's closing teachings, one addressed not to the child, but to the part of you doing the imagining right now, the adult self who showed up tonight to do this quiet, patient work. I am capable of giving what I once needed. I don't have to wait for anyone else to offer it first. Part 3. The Stoics understood something important about the relationship between repeated thought and character. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person's mind takes on the color of their thoughts, the way cloth takes on the color of the dye it's steeped in. This is not so different from what we've discussed tonight about the subconscious and repetition. The Stoics arrived, through careful self-observation, at much the same conclusion modern psychology has arrived at through careful research. What you rehearse again and again eventually becomes the fabric of who you are. This is not a call to force positivity or to paper over real difficulty with hollow affirmation. The Stoics were clear that this dying process takes time and cannot be rushed by wishing alone. It requires patient, consistent immersion, which is exactly why we return to this practice night after night,
rather than expecting one session to change everything. The Buddhist tradition offers a companion teaching here through the concept sometimes called skillful means, the idea that different practices suit different moments, and that repetition, done with sincerity rather than mechanical habit, gradually reshapes the mind's habitual patterns. This is very close to what we've been doing tonight, not reciting affirmations by rote, but pairing them with genuine feeling and vivid imagery so that the repetition carries real weight rather than becoming empty ritual.
Before we move toward tonight's closing teachings, let us pause and move through the body once, gathering together what this visualization work has touched. Bring your attention to your chest, where the words you've offered tonight may still be settling. Let it soften, rising and falling freely, no longer bracing against an old belief that comfort had to be earned. Bring your attention to your hands, which may have imagined offering comfort tonight, a blanket, a steady touch, a resource this child never had. Let them rest now, open, having given what they came to give. Bring your attention to your whole body and notice, without forcing anything, whether any part of you feels even slightly different than it did an hour ago. Sometimes the difference is subtle, a slightly softer jaw, a slightly deeper breath. Sometimes nothing feels different yet, and that too is simply part of a process that unfolds in layers, over many nights, rather than all at once. Let us close this movement with a final, simple practice, a brief loving kindness offering, directed tonight at your own capacity to keep doing this work, night after night, patiently. May I trust the slow process of change, even when I can't yet see its results. May I return to this practice again, not because I've failed to master it tonight, but because return itself is the practice. May the child within me feel, a little more each night, that they are no longer waiting alone. Final descent. The words take root. We have walked a careful road tonight, through the mechanics of belief itself, through a visualization built with real detail, through affirmations spoken slowly enough to actually land. Feel your body now, heavy against the bed. Let the words we've spoken tonight settle further into you, the way water settles into dry soil, slowly, without any need to rush. You do not need this image to be perfectly vivid or perfectly resolved for tonight's work to matter. Every night this practice is repeated, the image tends to grow steadier. The words tend to land a little more easily. The resistance tends to soften a little further. This is not magic. It is simply the mind doing what minds have always done, rehearsing, absorbing, and slowly, patiently believing what is offered consistently with real feeling over real time. Let your breathing return to its own natural rhythm now, unmanaged, unguided. mind is now a calm place to rest. You showed up again tonight. That, more than any single perfect phrase, is what this work has always been about.